Right now, Dr. Ben Carson is with us, a retired neurosurgeon, former HUD secretary under Trump. New book, The Perilous Fight, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family. And Dr. Carson, appreciate you joining us. We were just playing a poll that discussed the increasing amount of support, especially among young black voters, that is out there for Donald Trump. You travel the country a great deal talking to people, and you have for years. Do you see that? Do you think black voters are more open to Trump than they were in 16 or 20? What are you seeing out on your travels and your discussions?
Yeah, there's a big difference between the previous times because they've had an actual chance to see what he does. You know, he actually does what he says. He's unlike most politicians. And he's transparent. You never have to sit there and wonder what he's thinking. He's going to tell you what he's thinking. And I think people appreciate that. They've also seen the impact of his policies. You know, the average American had a wage gain of 8.2% during the Trump administration and a 3.2% decrease under Biden. That's a big swing. And people feel that when they go to the gas pump, when they open their utility bills, you know, when they go to the grocery stores. And I think people recognize now it's become patently obvious that the media is very biased and will say whatever they need to say in order to support their ideology and their candidate as opposed to providing the truth. So people are discounting a lot of what they took as gospel before.
Dr. Carson, appreciate you being with us. You I'm sure, know that there's chatter out there reporting sources close to the former president on this issue that you are in contention for the vice president role on a Trump ticket. Can you just tell us, have you had any conversations with President Trump about this? And whether you have or not, would you be ready to serve in the role of VP if called upon?
Not had that conversation. We've talked about what we can do to save this country, and I am foursquare committed to doing that from within the administration or outside the administration, but I continue to be dedicated to that one way or the other.
We're talking to Dr. Ben Carson. In your telling, I know you've got grandchildren now. When you look at the history of the country, are you more optimistic today or pessimistic based on the way you see things going?
Well, I'm optimistic when you just look at the facts. You know, there's some pessimism when you look at all the spin. You know, for instance, a lot of people on the left like to tell you we haven't made much progress in terms of race relationships. And yet, you know, I vividly remember as a 6-year-old going to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and seeing the whites and colored signs and having people explain that to me. And yet, in the very same lifetime, we've got black admirals and generals and CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and heads of foundations, university presidents. We've had a black president of the United States. I mean, to sit there and say that we haven't made tremendous progress is absolutely asinine. But some people do that, and they just have blinders on, and they think if they keep repeating something that people will come to believe that. We've made enormous progress. It doesn't mean that we've reached nirvana. We haven't. We have ways to go. But the way we do that is that we learn from things that have occurred in the past. We don't try to bury them. We don't try to rewrite them. We learn from them. The good, the bad, and the ugly. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to the United States, there's a lot more good than there is bad and ugly.
Talking to Dr. Ben Carson. He's got a new book, The Perilous Fight, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family. Dr. Carson, what do you think is the most important thing that could be done as a policy matter? I mean, certainly there's just community, there's church, there's a synagogue, there's so many aspects to the way that we can have a family-focused future here in this country. But what do you think from policy level could be done differently or could be done to help family formation? Because there is clearly a crisis of family in America today.
Oh, there's no question. When you look at family formation, the average birth per woman is down to 1.6 now. It requires 2.1 in order to maintain the population. So that's a real issue. But I think policy-wise, we need to firmly put in place something about voting. Voting can only occur if you're an American citizen. Because if we don't get that firmly in place, there's going to be some major problems coming down the pike here with all these people who've infiltrated our country.
We're talking to Dr. Ben Carson, building on what Buck just said. Yesterday was Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you. And as I've said, all the dads out there. If you look at the data, starting about the time that Lyndon Johnson began the Great Society, the percentage of fathers inside of homes, that is two-parent households, has collapsed. It collapsed for white, black, Asian, and Hispanic families, if you look at the data, but particularly for black families. How does that get addressed, and how can we talk about the importance of dads being in the home and what they mean for kids to help to reverse, not only, as you just pointed out, every woman only having 1.6 kids. We got a real population crisis everywhere. Japan, China, United States, Italy, it doesn't really matter the country. But dads not being present in households has a devastating impact on individual kid outcomes. What do we do to address that?
Well, first of all, we acknowledge it. You know, the liberal think tanks and the conservative think tanks both come to the same conclusion, and that is children raised in a traditional nuclear two-parent family do much better on every level: career, academics, trouble with police, mental status, everything. So we should first of all acknowledge that, and then don't ignore that when it comes to the kinds of things that we do in our society, kinds of rules that we make, the policies that we have. You know, I think about, when I was at HUD, there's a policy that if you're receiving government assistance and your income goes up, you have to report that immediately so your rent can go up. That's not a big incentive to improve yourself. You bring somebody else into the household with an income, you have to report that so that your rent can go up. That's not something that's going to increase family formation. So, we need to actually make our policies congruent with what we know to be facts, and do things based on facts and not ideology. That will make a huge difference.
Dr. Ben Carson, the book is The Perilous Fight, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family. Dr. Carson, always an honor, sir. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
People have been switching their wireless service from Verizon, T-Mobile, or AT&T to Pure Talk to save money for years now. Their monthly price of $20 a month for unlimited talk, text, and tons of data is a sure bet. But for the last few weeks, Pure Talk has seen a surge of new customers signing up to support a charity helping our veterans called America's Warrior Partnership. They're on the front lines of preventing veteran suicide by filling the basic needs of our vets. That can include housing, employment, food services, access to medical benefits, and counseling, just to name a few. Pure Talk has decided to extend their support for AWP through the July 4th weekend. So switch your cell phone service to America's most dependable 5G network with Pure Talk before the 4th of July weekend, and you'll be helping support veterans in need all across the country. Dial pound 250 and say the keywords Clay and Buck, and you'll be connected to Pure Talk's U.S. customer service team. That's pound 250 and say the keywords Clay and Buck.